Hey everybody, today I'm going to talk about a 1969 film about dominance and submission from the man who filmed A Fistful of Dollars and featuring Italian sex bomb Laura Antonelli. But the most shocking thing about this movie is actually how good it is. Okay, this film adaptation of Venus in Furs is based on the 1870 short novel of the same name by Leopold von Sacher-Masoch, in which the male protagonist named Severin seeks sexual gratification and being punished by a cruel mother figure. The author Sacher-Masoch is, of course, the origin of the term masochism, and masochism is indeed the primary theme of this novella and this film adaptation. The experience of watching Venus in Furs is a complicated one, and it may cause you some cognitive dissonance. On one hand, you are watching vintage softcore pornography, though the sexual content here seems quaint and even wholesome in a day and age where pretty much any depravity that one can imagine can be instantly summoned to one's personal device. And on the other hand, though some of the sadistic violence in the film is a bit hard to watch in places, this is actually a poignant love story which manages to generate empathy for its protagonist. On top of this, the film is surprisingly cerebral, especially if you haven't yet been introduced to Sacher-Masoch's musings on the relationships between men and women, and specifically the ideas of dominance and submission, which, despite the fact that many of us today like to believe in romantic relationships as some kind of spiritual union of equals, dominance is a key to understanding all relationships between men and women, whether we admit it or not. Aside from the intellectual content of the film, the setting of the film is absolutely beautiful, in particularly the second half, which was shot at a gorgeous villa in Spain's ruggedly beautiful Costa Brava region. One of the first things you'll notice when you watch Venus in Furs, and I want to remind you that this is the Massimo Dallamano version, also known as Devil in the Flesh, is how well made the film is. The visual presentation, the scene composition, the beautiful European settings, and the very catchy musical score. This film confounds our expectations very early on. Director Massimo Dallamano is an unusual director in that he brings top-notch filmmaking skills to film genres in which we wouldn't necessarily expect to find these qualities. Dallamano started out as a cinematographer. In fact, he was the cinematographer on Sergio Leone's first two spaghetti western films, A Fistful of Dollars and For a Few Dollars More, which gave birth to the spaghetti western genre. Dallamano turned to directing after this and focused on making films for the international market. And these films were like Leone's spaghetti westerns in that they were typically made with an international cast who didn't all speak the same language. So in Venus in Furs, we have a remarkable ensemble of actors. There's the Italian actress Laura Antonelli, and I'll talk about her in a minute. There are two German soft porn actors who, in this same year of 1969, appeared in a German film called The Swedish Wife Exchange Club. We have a young Austrian former figure skater turned stage actor. Then we have an aging German blonde bombshell named Mady Rahl, who was considered by the Third Reich to be an ideal of German female beauty and was known to be a favorite of Nazi propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels. And finally, playing the role of Bruno, we have the strapping American Loren Ewing from Aberdeen, South Dakota. I want to focus for a minute on the female lead in this film, the character of Wanda, played by Laura Antonelli. Now, Laura Antonelli was an Italian actress who was very popular in the genre of Italian sex comedies, among others. And she was active from the mid-1960s through the 1980s. She has a unique appeal that is difficult to describe. She was certainly a very attractive lady, but she was definitely not flashy at all. She wasn't a 6-foot statuesque Teutonic blonde like Ursula Andress, and she didn't have an iconic appearance in the way that Brigitte Bardot or Sophia Loren did. Her true appeal only becomes apparent when you see her in action on screen. She just has this lovely, radiant, yet understated femininity that you notice immediately. It's not just her looks. It's her behavior, her voice, her authentic sweetness. It's just overpowering. She comes across as a warm and kind woman who happens to also be smoking hot, and this is a pretty special combination. All right, let's put this film into some context. Venus in Furs is a fine example of what film historians now call a sexploitation film. And this is the sort of movie that would not have appeared in regular theaters back in the day, at least not in the US where I'm from. It would have been shown in grindhouse theaters. And grindhouses were places that were usually found in larger cities on the seedy side of town up through the 1970s, where all manner of schlocky movies were shown. Not just softcore films like this one, but any kind of film that was perceived to be cheap or low quality. And these grindhouses thrived in an area before the advent of adult movie theaters, which featured explicit pornographic content, and home video. So this film, due to its international distribution and its controversial content and subject matter, was released under a zillion different titles, and the versions released were often quite different from each other due to the degree of editing that had to be made to get around the censors in that particular country, and the language that the film was dubbed in for that particular release. And to add to this confusion, there are two other film adaptations of Zakir Massok's Venus in Furs that came out around the same time as this version. One by the American Joe Marzano, and the other by the legendary Spanish filmmaker Jesus Franco. So that's all I'm going to say about Venus in Furs. Definitely keep an open mind and check this film out. Let me know what you think. Thank you for watching. I'm Rod Richards. Until next time.